United States is the 7 Noahide Laws. In other words, the Book of Talmud is the foundation of law in the United States now.
Dominating part of the giant defense, Banks, Reasons, Carson, and Taylor, the 4 leading tacklers. In the secondary, rookie Mark Collins, Harry Williams on the corners, Kenny Hill and Terry Kennard on the safety. Be an interesting match between Rafferty and Burton, the two number 64s. White, Dorsett, Newsom, Tony Hill, and Mike Renfro, the wide receivers. 2-8A, Titanser, Rafferty, Crawford, Kerr, Phil Posterick, the right tackle, and Doug Crosby, the tight end. It'll be 2nd and 12. Dorsett. Walker is also in the game.
And then he proceeded to privatize all federal assets.
Andy White, Lee Hill moves left. Dorsett and Newsom are the starting running backs.
In other words, all the highways are for sale, all the dams are for sale, all the hydroelectric generation plants are for sale.
There are no
all
more
the
public
nuclear plants
offices
are
or
for
public
sale.
lands in America.
Everything is for sale to the highest bidder now. And our law system has changed. It used to be based on the Bible and Christianity. Now it's based on the...
Inaugurated during the Clinton administration. Okay, remember, just before Bush Sr. left office, he signed the Noahide Laws. Okay. Congressman William Dannemeyer from California was a witness to it.
No, wait, man. Picture. Now we're in spot this also. Yes. I think we better do it over here on the side.
And then maybe I can have this gentleman step in, right in there.
I'll just.
Maybe I'll come up this way. That's great.
Even closer.
Yeah.
Well, the ethical teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe have as much relevance today as they ever have. The values upon which the movement is based, wisdom and reverence, are not just desirable, they're necessary to the very survival of civilization. Now we shall proclaim this day Education Day. Just use this pen here. And please give my warmest regards to the Rebbe on this his 86th birthday. Thank you very much.
The Rebbe sends his regards to you, Mr. President, and he expresses his wishes, as he always did, that you should be able to carry out the extraordinary role that the Almighty has assigned to you, as you have until now, with health and happiness, together with the First Lady, for many years to come. In whatever position you'll be filling, we all look forward to you to continue the great work, historical work that you have started on behalf of education, specifically by returning the traditional values which have been the bedrock of civilization ever since beginning. And these are the 7 Noahide Laws contained and given by Moses, as it is reflected here in this scroll. We thank you very much on behalf of all our colleagues, of the entire Jewish people, especially with the approach of the Passover holiday throughout the world.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was said to be a unanimous act of Congress. You can read it. It's called.
I need to pull it up.
It was a commemoration of the birthday of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. He's a member of the Shabbat Lubavitcher sect, of which Alan Dershowitz, for example, the famous attorney, is a
He's
member.
actually got up on stage and said that if a Jew needs a kidney and a white man has a kidney that manages, it's perfectly fine for you to kill the white man and take his kidney, the goyim.
So anyway,
this is what the rabbis say. Now,
it was
the
called,
rules
the
of
initiative,
Talmud.
the policy initiative begun under the Clinton administration was called Reinventing Government. And it was Al Gore who was tasked to bring this in. And this is when the entire government was turned over to privatized hands. Okay? Every office in this country that used to be a public office is now incorporated.
Yes.
Administrator.
Okay?
Administrative, yeah.
And if you go onto my website, I've got a series called The Sum of All Things in 5 parts.
Okay.
In the first part, it says, you scroll down in gold letters, it says communitarianism equals. Each of these words is a link back to answers.com.
In the United States is the 7 Noahide Laws. In other words, the Book of Talmud is the foundation of law in the United States now.
It's just not, it's
how-
the reality in America today is simply not discussed.
I asked the question, how did Obamacare get passed into law when none of the congressmen had ever read or written the law? No one in the Congress wrote the bill. So first we have to ask ourselves the question, who wrote the Obamacare Act? The answer? A think tank appointed by the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, under the bankruptcy, lawyers at the Council on Foreign Relations wrote it. Now, why did they write the Obamacare Act? The Obamacare Act is the implementation of Plank 3 of the Communist Manifesto, No Inheritance.
It's known formally as the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. It's a communitarian document through and through.
And it's designed to steal all your money before you die. Now, they talked about death panels and rationing care. Yes. But if you read the act, you'll notice that they can draft your bank account directly for payment for services.
Rahm Emanuel's older brother is a renowned bioethicist. His name is Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel. He served on the panel that actually dreamt up and included within the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act what we euphemistically call Obamacare, something called the duty to die principle.
Duty to die.
Yes, you have a duty to die. You have a duty to the rest of society. So they're going to ration care. When you get old, they're going to ration care. And here's how they're going to ration the care. It's very simple. They can look directly in your bank account and see how much money you have. And if you have a lot of money, they're going to give you a lot of care and they're going to take all your money. And if you don't have any money, and if you only got $10 in your bank account, they're going to give you 2 aspirin, they're going to charge you $10 and send you home to die. It's your duty to die because the rest of society would have to support you and pay for your care. You don't have no money.
And
You must all know half a dozen people at least who are no use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. Just put them there and say, sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence? If you can't justify your existence, if you're not pulling your weight in the social vote, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive, because your life does not benefit us and it can't be of very much use to yourself.
I might point out there's a couple other isms that I forgot to mention. Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, renowned bioethicist, that's a pseudoscience, by the way, just like psychology and psychiatry, a soft science, if you will. We used to call it what it was. It was a pseudoscience. It was faux science. It was opinion. Okay, and that's really what all of science is today. Instead of the use of deductive logic and the scientific method, it is now the consensus of learned scientific opinion, which is what constitutes science. But Ezekiel Emanuel is a self-admitted futilitarian. And so one of the schools of thought, which is inclusive within communitarianism, is called futilitarianism. And it's a portmanteau that comes from the words futility and utile or utilitarian, something useful. The father of utilitarianism is a guy named Jeremy Bentham. He is the guy that came up with the model prison called the Panopticon.
He's stuffed.
He's
in a glass cage.
He is. The Panopticon was a model prison that the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati founded on May 1st, May Day, 1776. Adam Weishaupt was funded by one of the Warburgs, if I'm not mistaken, or a Rothschild, one or the other. but he had unlimited funding. He was trained as a Jesuit priest in a Jesuit school in Germany, and he originally wanted to call it the Order of the Perfectibilists, and for a time it was called the Order of the Perfectibilists. You can look it up, perfectibilism, okay? But he also wanted to call it the Society or the Order of the Bees, because they envisioned the ideal society as being like a bee colony, a beehive. You know, you've got the queen and the retinue of the queen's court, that's the inner circle.
Royal symbolism.
Then you've got the worker bees, and then you've got the drones.
Yes.
Okay? And the guy that made that famous was a guy named Bernard de Mandeville, who was a noted economist in his day. He was quite influential even with the founding fathers. He's the one that developed the division of labor theory within economics.
Yeah.
The world. If you've noticed, Greece has defaulted on its loans. This past December, Puerto Rico owed $1 billion interest payment on their $72 billion in loans they failed to make.
Yeah.
Last August, they missed a $68 million payment, so they defaulted on their loans. Italy, all the money's been sucked out. Spain, all the money's been sucked out. And I explained to people earlier how this has happened. All the countries in Southern Europe have suffered the currency risk when they borrowed in a foreign currency. Here's how it works. In 1997,
And the dollar
they
today is a foreign currency.
Yes, they issued the euro and they loaned Greece the euro. Now, when they loaned Greece the euro was worth 3 drachmas. It was worth 75 US cents. Okay? They made a 10-year bond. They borrowed the money for 10 years at 4% interest. Over the course of those 10 years, the currency risk came into play. In other words, the euro grew stronger and the Greek drachma grew weaker. So when it came time to pay back the loan, the exchange rate was 6 drachmas per euro. So now, instead of having a 4% interest rate, the interest rate had ballooned to 104%. You had to pay back double because the currency risk had cut the value of your currency in half because you'd borrowed too much money. Confidence was lost in the government of Greece. The value of the currency went down. Remember, currency is confidence. The more confidence there is in the government of your country, the more the currency is worth. The currency of any country is worth the sum total of all the work of the citizens of the country. So, what happens...
Is that a confidence game?
Yes, it's a confidence game.
Yes.
So what happens? Let's say that the US dollar is very weak and gas and oil is $200 a barrel. So the rulers of the United States decide that they want to crash the price of oil and get the dollar strong again. So what do? Well, in the 1950s, they spent $2 million to overthrow the duly elected government of Iran. They sent the CIA over there and they installed the Shah of Iran. You see? Confidence in the government was destroyed and the currency floundered. It went bad.
Shah of Iran was also a crypto Jew. The Saudi royal family is crypto
Absolutely.
Jew. The modern state of Turkey was founded by Ataturk, who is a Jew. The current president of Turkey is a Jew. His name is Erdogan.
Okay.
Merkel is a Jew.
So anyhow, whenever,
And it's not to demonize
1940.
Jews. It's not to demonize Jews. It's just the fact.
Yeah.
Bankers.
so whenever we provoke a war in a foreign country, what happens? Let's take Syria as an example. The CIA has gone into Syria to foment disruption and to overthrow the Assad regime. So let's assume that you're a 100 millionaire in Syrian dollars and you live in Syria. And you know that the government is going to overthrow the Assad regime and your dollars are going to be worth 0.
Right.
As soon as the government falls, your dollar is worthless. So I take my Syrian dollars and I convert them into US dollars. Now, when I convert those dollars into US dollars, there's a lot of demand for the bonds that the US Federal Reserve Bank is creating. Now, there's $160 trillion of debt nationwide, but only $18 trillion in US debt. That means that big money from around the world, when there's political unrest, only 10% or so of the money can buy US government debt and convert their money into US currency for the safety of US currency. So at any time that we want the price of oil to go down, we start a war. This causes all the capital from the foreign countries to run to the safety of the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar gets strong, the U.S. dollar is anti-commodity, all commodities get weak. Yeah. Now, if you understand that the 1933, after the Great Depression, what happened is what happened in 1933 was the result of the overspending on World War I. Remember, we had a fixed gold system where gold was $20 an ounce. So a $20 bill would be exchangeable for an ounce of gold. So at the beginning of the First World War, all the gold in the world rushed to the United States for safety. This made the dollar extremely strong. Then, during the First World War, we overspent the budget and we inflated the currency until it couldn't support the $20 an ounce anymore. In fact, world markets for gold were $30 an ounce. So if you had a US dollar, $20 bill, you could send it to the Federal Treasury, get an ounce of gold for it, sell it on the open market for $30, put 10 in your pocket, send 20 back, get another ounce of gold, and just empty the treasury of gold. Yeah. This is why, see, de Gaulle was repatriating all US dollars for gold in the 1950s and 60s. This caused
the Bretton Woods Agreement.
This caused us to close the gold window in 1971.
Okay.
Why?
Okay, well, what part of this, what you're missing here, and it's in the congressional records in 1932, 33, is whenever McFadden was on the floor, went back and showed that our Congress gave the Federal Reserve over $160 billion in gold bullion. That 160 in gold bullion in the 1930s went straight to Germany.
No, what happened is they repriced the gold. First they confiscated it at $20 an ounce, yeah. Then they repriced it at $35 an ounce. They profited $2 billion. They took that $2 billion and they set up the Exchange Stabilization Fund. This fund was designed to fight currency wars around the world to maintain the value of the dollar. To give you an idea again how this could work is you take your $2 billion now and you want to cause war in Turkey. So we go and we start on the currency markets, we start buying Turkish lira. So this year we buy 10 million, next year we buy 15 million, the next year we buy 20, the next year we buy 25, the next year we buy 30. We invest $100 million in Turkish lira over 10 years, okay? Now the Turkish lira is soaring. Why? We invested $100 million in the Turkish economy by buying their currency, you see? So now what do? Well, you go to the currency exchange market and you short the Turkish lira and you sell $100 million worth of lira all at once. You collapse the market in Turkey and you create a fucking war because the value of the currency drops precipitously. All the money from all the big money in Turkey immediately rushes into the US dollar and strengthens the dollar. That's why Dick Cheney said deficits don't matter. We can go and foment a war, get all the people in the world to convert their currency and move their gold to the United States for safety, because we got the biggest fucking military.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people you talk to and you start talking about the Jews or Jewish Zionism and they start looking over their shoulders and they say, you better be careful. Well, they would never do that if I was talking about the French or the English or the Australians, but about the Jews, they're terrified. You have to get over that terror in order to speak truth, and that's the only way we can make any inroads if people become not afraid of telling the truth.
You're a truth denier. You're a stupid motherfucker for news. Though you know they're liars, you wouldn't want to upset any Jews, so you keep your mouth shut. The apple cart you will not disturb, cause if you call a spade, they say the word.
This book is critical of Israel. It is the case for dismantling our planet's most dangerous arsenal of atomic weapons of mass destruction.
Keep your electric eye on truth, babe. Make America come first. Don't cast pearls before swine, love. Freak out on their corporate daydream, oh yeah. Don't fake it, baby. Lay the real thing on me. Don't water my news down. Talk about the USS Liberty. Call me crazy, but let me know you really care, or we gonna take you off the air.
Kind of funny,
continue to be amazed that so many people have these gut reactions to any criticism of the state of Israel. They get absolutely hysterical.
Rest in peace to your anti-Semite buzzword. It won't work. It don't work. It won't work. It don't work. It wasn't Muslims, baby. Any blind fool can see. The job was almost solid. I bet you any amount of money you'll see. If you investigate it, you'll find the Zionists behind it, yeah. Just like the Levant affair.
You can criticize Iceland, you can criticize Indonesia, you can criticize Ireland, you can criticize anybody else in the face of the planet. But if you criticize Israel,
no more bloody wars for Israel, no, no.
They call you a racist, they call you a Hitler apologist, they have all these terrible things to say.
Keep your electric eye on truth, babe. Make America come first. Don't cast pearls before swine, love. Freak out on their corporate daydream, oh yeah. Beautiful America, I love you. Wonderful America, I need you. Patriot America, I want you. To worry about America, kill the corporate media. Beautiful America, I love you. Wonderful America, I need you.
Is the 7 Noahide Laws.
America, I want you.
In other words, the Book of Talmud is the foundation of law in the United States now.
And yet, we have this arms race going on in the Middle East. Israel is central to it. Israel was the first country in the Middle East to get a nuclear weapon. That's why all these other countries have looked jealously upon Israel's nuclear arms and also looked with fear on Israel's nuclear arms, because these people recognize that Israel is a powerful country in and of itself, backed up by the United States. Some estimates say that Israel has the world's 5th biggest nuclear arsenal, and yet we have these John Hagee types, these fanatical fundamentalists who say that I'm going to hell for criticizing Israel and saying that Israel shouldn't be building a nuclear bomb. They say that anyone who criticizes Israel is going to hell. Well, if they consider me a candidate for hell, then they should also consider the U.S. military leaders as a candidate for hell, because a few years ago, the American military lent their name to a report issued, I believe, by the U.S. Army War College, which said that one solution to the nuclear arms race in the Middle East was for Israel to open up its nuclear weapons for inspection. I have a whole chapter on that in the book, The Golem. It's the U.S. Army talking here. This is the U.S. Army talking, ladies and gentlemen, saying that Israel needs to open up its nuclear weapons. Now, how many people have heard about that? Are we going to call the U.S. Army racist? Yes. The U.S. Army War College. It's all here in my book, The Golem. So, you know, these labels that are applied to me and to all other people who are critics of Israel and Israeli nuclear escalation, they really don't bother me in the least. I'm amused by them. I take a great deal of pleasure in knowing the fact that so many of my critics are illogical and illiterate and simply hysterical. And that all taken together suggests to me that maybe I'm on the right track, and maybe American Free Press is on the right track, and the Republic Broadcasting Network is on the right track, and daring to say that we should look out for America first.
The United States is the 7 Noahide Laws. In other words, the Book of Talmud is the foundation of law in the United States now.